I've designed over 1,000 residential solar systems for homeowners here in the US, and I've noticed 5 common design mistakes which homeowners often make. And in this video, I'm going to cover these 5 mistakes and teach you how to avoid them so that you do not make the same errors. Let's get into it. Now, the first common design mistake that I often see when evaluating homeowners' rooftop solar panel designs is placing panels in locations that are not the most strategic for their best self-interests. Many homeowners think it's as simple as saying, oh, that south face gets the most sunlight during the day, so let's just put all the panels there. But it's not as simple as that, and there are other factors which we need to take into account. It is true that we want to consider which faces of the roof receive the most sunlight throughout the year when selecting where to place solar panels. For instance, for this example here, we're looking at a house in Los Angeles, California, with the front of the house facing due north and the roof split across 4 sections. By going into our 3D irradiance mapping software, we can find that the annual irradiance on that south face of the roof is 2,270 kilowatt hours per meter square. The west face is 1,990 kilowatt hours per meter square. The north face is 1,640 kilowatt hours per meter square. And the east face is 1,970 kilowatt hours per meter square. This shows us that in a scenario where shading is not a factor, the south face is the best candidate for solar panels, followed by the western face, then the eastern face, and then finally the northern face. Now, this varies by location. The farther north that you go, for example, the more likely that it is that the western face of the roof will outperform the eastern face due to those longer summer days, which carry over into more afternoon sunlight on that western face. So make sure you take that into account if it applies to you. However, just looking at which roof faces get the most sunlight and placing panels accordingly is not the only factor we should consider. We also need to take a deep look at your specific electric plan and determine which hours of the day we need to prioritize solar production. In places like California and Arizona, where many utility companies have switched to time of use rate plans, electricity costs vary dependent upon the time of day. What this often looks like is homeowners paying a lower rate for power during the nighttime and the early morning hours, but during peak hours, which is typically between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m., the cost per kilowatt hour can double, if not triple. And if this applies to you, it becomes highly advantageous to prioritize placing panels on that western face of the roof, as that side will receive the most sunlight after 4 p.m. This is why for most rooftop solar panel systems in California or other time of use markets, I typically recommend homeowners in fact split the panels 50-50 between the southern and western faces if possible. Even though that south face is way more productive overall, the value of solar production in the late afternoon is significantly higher due to those peak electric rates. Now, if you live in a place like Florida or Texas where most utility companies still offer 1-to-1 net metering, this won't apply to you. And in that case, you can simply place the panels in areas with the highest irradiance per kilowatt hour meter square without worrying about time of use pricing. Now, the next common mistake which I see homeowners make when designing their solar panel systems is not properly sizing the system when determining how much of their home's annual electrical consumption to offset. You see, for most homeowners, when they invest into a solar panel system for their home, their goal is to install just enough solar panels to offset 100% of their home's annual consumption. They wouldn't want to go below 100% offset because that would mean that they still have an energy bill with the utility company. And a lot of people wouldn't want to go above 100% offset because that would mean they're purchasing panels which they don't ultimately need. However, while this approach seems fairly simple, what people often fail to consider are their future energy needs and whether or not those will be supported. For some homes, looking at the past 12 months of energy usage and sizing a system to produce that amount of kilowatt hours could work. However, the trend of home electrification is stronger than ever. And so if you're one of the many homeowners who expects to increase their electrical needs over time, whether that be by buying an EV, which you plan to charge at home, switching to a heat pump, or replacing gas appliances with electric ones, you'll want to account for those changes when sizing your solar panel system. Otherwise, you may find yourself in the unfortunate situation of having an ongoing electric bills in the future when you could have just planned ahead. We also need to consider that solar panels degrade over time, meaning their annual electrical production will decrease each year. If you invest into a tier 1 solar panel, you can expect degradation of about 8 to 10% over 25 years. However, if you opt for a tier 2 or even a tier 3 panel, that 25-year degradation could be as high as 15 to 20%. For that reason, I often recommend homeowners slightly oversize their systems to around 105 to 110% of their expected future annual consumption. This really provides a good balance between accounting for panel degradation over time while still avoiding purchasing an unnecessary amount of panels. Now, one common misconception which I often hear from homeowners, and usually those misled by unethical sales reps, is that there's nothing wrong with investing into extra solar panels because they can simply sell that extra electricity back to the grid and then have the utility company pay them at the same rate which they charge for energy. And while there is some truth to this, since net metering programs do allow homeowners to export excess solar energy to the grid and receive compensation from the utility companies, that compensation almost always comes in the form of credits, not cash. These net metering programs vary widely between different electrical providers, but in states like Texas or Florida, where one-for-one net metering is still common, excess solar energy produced during the day is pushed back onto the grid and sold to other homes in the area by the power company. In return, your power company will credit you with an amount equal to the number of kilowatt hours exported, which you can use later to offset your energy bill when your consumption exceeds your solar production. However, at no point can you just call up the power company and have them write you a check for those kilowatt hours at the cash value of their energy rates. They simply won't do that. Those credits can only be used to cover your future electrical consumption from the grid, which is why it often does not make financial sense to massively oversize your solar system beyond your expected future energy needs. So when determining how much of your home's energy to offset with solar, your approach shouldn't just be as simple as looking at your last 12 months of usage and having a solar consultant use software to calculate the number of panels needed for 100% offset. You should also consider how your energy habits may change in the future and how to make your system future-proof for your needs. And if you're thinking, well, I'll just invest into enough panels to offset 100% of my house's consumption this year, and then in a year or two from now, I'll just add more panels if needed, I can understand the logic. However, you'll often end up paying significantly more on a per panel basis for that second smaller add-on project, just due to the amount of fixed costs which are associated with solar installations. Financially, you'll be much better off by just planning for your future needs today. Now, if you've already started the process of shopping for solar and fielding some quotes online or calling out some installers to your house, you would know by now that what the process generally looks like is that they'll ask you for your utility bill in order to see how many kilowatt hours a year your house is consuming, at which point they would go into their computer or iPad and then use a technology to map out the solar panel system on your roof and get an idea for how many solar panels your home may need. However, one thing that many homeowners are not aware of is that unfortunately, there are many cheap solar design softwares out there which typically overpromise the production of a system, as they do not take into account all of the things which affect solar production, such as shading, LiDAR, and the path of the sun. If you have received a solar proposal and the design image looks like a bunch of black rectangles on a satellite, non-3D image of the top of your house, that design is likely not taking into account all of the factors which could affect solar production and could be overpromising what the system will actually produce. You want to look for a design that uses technologies such as 3D imaging, irradiance and LiDAR shade metrics, and one that takes into account the path of the sun throughout the day, as for that design will likely project the most accurate numbers as far as what the system will actually produce. Now, the reason why so many solar installers and sales reps do not want to use these softwares is because they can be a lot more expensive and take more time to get back those production models for the house. The solar company will actually have a company which specializes in 3D modeling actually construct a 3D virtual model of that house and roof, which takes into account the irradiance and LiDAR data. And that could cost them between $15 to $20 per design. And while that might not seem like a lot of money, when you have a company making hundreds of proposals for homeowners a week and thousands of proposals for homeowners a year, that can add up to a big expense. And so many of them would much rather use an instant satellite image design since they can get it back right away and save a lot of money quickly. Though unfortunately, these tools can be very inaccurate when it comes to providing solar panel production estimates, and they can really start homeowners off on the wrong track. Though, by the way, guys, if you are in the process of shopping for different solar options for your house and you would like to get one of these advanced designs and proposals, or maybe you already have a few bids for solar and you would simply like to receive a comparison quote just to make sure that you're getting a good deal, feel free to reach out to me by using the link below in the video description. And from there, you can see if we provide installation services to your state. And then at that point, you can book a quick call. And then from there, I can actually provide you with one of these advanced 3D models for your house to see how many solar panels you might need. Now, the next critical decision that you have to make after determining which faces of your roof are most optimal for solar panels is figuring out which solar panels to use. As you may have found, there are hundreds of different solar panel brands out there, and picking the right one from the start is critical to ensuring you're investing into a system which meets your needs. As you guys know, solar panel adoption is happening all over the world, not just in America. And because of this, many solar panels are designed to perform best in specific climates. And those panels are not suitable for all climates. Meaning, if you live in a hot desert area like Southern California or Arizona, the best solar panel for your project might not be the best option for somebody else who lives in Washington State or in the Northeast. While all solar panels still serve that same function, which is to convert the photons from the sun into usable electricity, they differ in various specifications such as temperature coefficient, cell type, efficiency, and other ratings which can dictate where a particular solar panel would work best. For example, companies investing into utility scale projects in places like the Mojave Desert in Nevada learned that they couldn't simply use a cheap tier 3 solar panel made overseas. They encountered a massive issue, which is that these solar panels had poor temperature coefficients, meaning they lost a significant amount of efficiency on those extremely hot days. And so to combat this, companies like REC and Maxeon began manufacturing solar panels with excellent temperature coefficients to mitigate these problems in those areas. However, this is not something that a homeowner in a northern state may prioritize. Instead, they may focus on selecting a solar panel designed with technology that allows it to maintain a high production level in low light conditions, which is far more important in those climates. And so in the end, you really want to discuss all of the available solar options with your solar consultant and determine which panel is best suited for your project based on the location and the specific environmental conditions in your area. Now, this information provided will help you understand common things to watch out for when designing a solar panel system, but if you're in the process of shopping for solar, you also need to make sure that you understand the most common mistakes that first-time solar homeowners make when going solar. So make sure you check out my video going over the 7 common mistakes that first-time solar homeowners make when going solar, which will pop up on the screen now. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.